For years, nobody in the sport talked a bigger game than Conor McGregor. He called his shots, named the round, and then went out and did exactly what he said he would. 2 divisions, 2 belts, and the biggest pay-per-view numbers the UFC had ever seen. He pulled in millions of casual fans who had never watched a fight in their lives, and for a few years, it felt like he couldn't lose. But this is the last image fans remember of Conor in the octagon. On the floor, his leg broken, shouting up at Dustin Poirier. Calm, humble, and respected by just about everyone in the sport, about as far from Conor as a fighter can get. So how did the nicest guy in the division end up being the man who ended the Conor McGregor era? Conor McGregor and Dustin Poirier arrived in the UFC at almost the same time, and the company knew exactly what to do with one of them. Conor was a marketing dream. Loud, Irish, and incredible on the mic.
I believe Conor wasn't trying to talk Jose Aldo or Floyd Mayweather out of something. He was trying to talk himself into something. And I believe he succeeded.
Before any of that, he'd been a plumber's apprentice in Dublin, training under John Kavanagh at SBG.
No Irish man had fought and won inside the octagon before. As far as my family were concerned, as far as my mother and father were concerned, I left what was a safety net of a trade as a plumber to pursue a career in fighting when no one had done it before me. So simply they were just listening to what I was saying, and I was just telling them, trust me, I will do it. I told them by the time I am 25 years of age, I will be a self-made millionaire through this game.
He cleaned out Cage Warriors and held their featherweight and lightweight titles at the same time. By then, the noise around him was loud enough that Dana White went to Dublin himself to get him signed. His debut took barely a minute, a first-round knockout of Marcus Brimage that earned him a bonus on the way out. Then he tore his ACL against Max Holloway and spent the better part of a year on the sidelines. When he finally came back, he wanted to send a message.
I want people to feel like, how's he going to react after this long layoff, coming home, main eventing in his hometown? How can he cope with all of this? And then I go out and perform the way I perform and blow everyone away, silence the division. My name, the McGregor name, is bled on the battlefield in the war-torn Scottish Highlands in the 17th century when we were fighting off the British. I believe my ancestors were doing that in them days. I'm here doing that in the modern era, fighting on the modern gladiator stage in the UFC.
And he did, finishing Diego Brandao in the first round in front of a packed home crowd in Dublin. Dustin Poirier came from the complete opposite end of all of this. He grew up in Lafayette, Louisiana, dropped out of school in the 9th grade, and spent his teenage years in street fights and collecting cans for whatever money he could get. There was no PR team and certainly no catchphrases. He just fought, won, and let the results speak for him. And by 2014, he'd built himself into one of the more dangerous featherweights on the roster. By the back half of that year, both men were climbing the same division at the same time, and the UFC could see where it was heading. Conor was being fast-tracked toward a title shot, the new face the company wanted to build everything around. Dustin was exactly the kind of opponent they needed for that, a tough, proven ranked name who could make Conor look good on the way up. So they put the two of them together.
The Poirier matchup is interesting to me, and I'm firmly in the camp that McGregor's going to win. I don't rule out the case that at all. I respect Dustin Poirier tremendously. I enjoy talking to him when I've covered UFC events. He's a very, very nice guy from humble beginnings who has made a very successful career for himself. And I think even if he loses on Saturday, he'll still have some great wins ahead of him in this division. And listen, he may surprise everyone, including me. But the way in which they're building up Conor McGregor, I think what they see is that we've got this guy who is already, you can take him out the wrapper and he's a promotional dream come true.
On paper, it looked like a routine night for the company's rising star because Poirier wasn't being lined up as a real threat. He was being lined up as a stepping stone. For Dustin Poirier, this was supposed to be the night he exposed Conor McGregor as all talk. He saw a chance to shut Conor up. But Conor understood something Dustin didn't yet, which was that the fight started long before either of them stepped into the cage. So he went to work on him early. He mocked where Dustin came from, leaned into the hillbilly jokes, and got under his skin at every press conference and face-off they did together.
His weakness is obviously his chin. Look, don't get me wrong, I like the kid. He's a quiet little hillbilly from the back arse of nowhere. You know, I've nothing against the guy, you know what I mean? I'm sure he grew up in a circus or a fair, or, you know, he's a nice little kid. So, Cletus, or, you know, his cousin's probably named Cletus or something. I don't know, he's a nice kid. But his chin is gonna be cracked, and it's gonna be cracked early. And I don't hit like these people. He talking, I haven't got experience at the top level. You know, he main evented one UFC event and lost. I main evented my hometown, and it was one of the best UFC events in history. And I stopped the guy inside one round. So you know, I'm experienced. He will know pretty early that he's in over his head.
Dustin was still young then, and he'd never dealt with anything like the chaos Conor created in the build-up to a fight. By the time the weigh-ins came around, the tension was legit, and Dustin wasn't fighting to prove a point anymore. He was fighting because he was angry.
First time I fought Conor, I felt like that. When the bell rang, I was like a deer in the headlights. It's happening. Here we go. All this, you know, all that talk and everything over the months just sat in my head.
Yeah.
And I just read into it too much.
Conor, on the other hand, looked completely calm. He'd already told everyone how it was going to go, the round he'd finish it in, and exactly what he'd do to get there.
Trust me, this is a first round KO for me. I have no doubt in my mind. His toes will curl, and I will celebrate.
And then he went out and did it. When the fight started, the difference between the two of them was obvious straight away. Dustin came forward emotional and wild, swinging for the finish, while Conor stayed relaxed, waited for his moment, and dropped him. It was over inside the first round, the first knockout loss of Dustin Poirier's career. On the night, it looked exactly like what everyone expected, the rising star walking through the next name on his list. But something happened to Dustin in that cage that would end up mattering far more than the result. And it taught him a lesson that Conor, on the biggest winning run of his life, never had to learn.
I mean, it was a huge loss, but if anything I can say I took away from that fight was maybe the mental warfare. You know, I stopped caring so much about what people thought and about what people said. Not only my opponents, but the media and the fan base.
After that first fight, Conor and Dustin went in completely opposite directions. And for the next 6 years, you could watch the gap between them get wider and wider. For Conor, everything got louder. He knocked out Jose Aldo in 13 seconds to take the featherweight title.
But this was a powerful punch. Look at that. Boom, bang, bang. But first of all, you got to realize it's perfectly placed.
Yeah,
the accuracy's impeccable. Second of all, some people can just crack. And if you look at Conor's build, there's a lot of guys built like that can crack.
I want to see it in slow motion.
He's got real wide shoulders. He's real fast. And he's got big hands. Like all those things together, he's just got that freakish punch. There's just people that just have that kind of punch, man.
Oh.
I mean, that's just genius.
He lost to Nate Diaz, beat him in the rematch, then jumped up and took the lightweight belt off Eddie Alvarez to become the first man to hold 2 UFC titles at once. Then he left the sport entirely to box Floyd Mayweather for a payday north of $100 million.
When I count to 3, I want this entire arena to scream, "F*** the Mayweathers!" 1, 2, 3, F*** the Mayweathers!
When he came back, he was on top of the world, but his antics got more and more crazy too. There was the bus attack in Brooklyn, the loss to Khabib at UFC 229, and the brawl that spilled out after it.
Obviously, everybody's shaken up when 30 thugs storm these guys are all cutting weight and getting ready for a fight. This is the most disgusting thing that has ever happened in the history of the company.
There were retirement posts, long stretches of doing nothing, and then a blowout of Donald Cerrone. Conor's life had become a run of huge, loud events. Dustin's looked nothing like that. He moved up to lightweight after admitting the featherweight cut was wrecking him mentally.
When I lost to Conor at 45, the goal was to stay at 45 and be the world champ, or at least fight for the belt before I moved up. But me and my coaches always knew that I had to move up. I was just getting too heavy and it was hurting me too much. So when I lost to Conor, I realized I got 2 or 3 more fights to put myself back in that title position, and we just can't do it. So we went up to 55 and I kind of reestablished myself and I got a streak going.
He slipped up against Michael Johnson, but other than that, he reeled off wins. Anthony Pettis, Justin Gaethje, Eddie Alvarez, the list kept growing. He won the interim lightweight title against Max Holloway, lost to Khabib like Conor did, but walked away from that one with his reputation higher than it had ever been before.
It's amazing to see in this sport, more so than any other sport, when someone suffers a loss, a heartbreaking loss, but they just show some emotion and you kind of feel for them and the journey and you get invested, you become even more popular. It's a weird thing. Like sometimes you even become more popular in a loss than you would in a win. And I feel like that's what's happening to you now, just like looking at social media. Have you noticed that as well? Like now just seeing like I think you're over 1 million Instagram followers, all this stuff. People don't really seem to care as long as you put yourself out there, you wear your emotion on your sleeve, and it seems like this means a lot to you. And I feel like that phenomenon is happening to you right now.
Then he went 5 hard rounds with Dan Hooker in a fight that showed he could survive pretty much anything. Away from all of that, he was building the Good Fight Foundation and turning into the most liked man in the division.
Me and my wife were sitting back a few years ago, getting ready for a fight, talking about what we can do. And we just decided to give it its own name, the Good Fight Foundation, start an actual nonprofit, stop doing it out of my name, give this thing its own identity and see how organically we can grow this and help as many people as possible. And now it's amazing. Just 2 years ago, that was an idea, and now it's an actual nonprofit, and we're doing things all over the world.
So by 2020, they'd both lost to the same man, but they were standing at opposite ends of their own careers. Conor was older, richer, and barely fighting. Dustin was the most battle-tested lightweight on the planet, and he'd stopped reacting to noise from anybody. Conor had spent those 6 years learning how to be a celebrity. Dustin had spent them learning how to be a fighter. 6.5 years after the first fight, the same 2 men were booked to run it back, and Conor was the favorite all over again. But something was different this time, and it wasn't what anyone expected. The trash talk was gone. Conor showed up to the press conference complimenting Dustin, calling it an honor to share the octagon with him, and the 2 of them swapped a bottle of Conor's whiskey for a bottle of Dustin's hot sauce. On the surface, it looked like growth, like Conor had finally matured into someone who respected the man across from him.
Conor's team, McGregor Sports Entertainment, did reach out to my foundation, and they are, starting the donation to the Good Fight Foundation, and we have huge plans for that. So Conor, man to man.
Pleasure, brother. My pleasure. Thank you.
You're gonna help a lot of people with that.
Yes, and you.
But underneath it, something else was going on. Conor wasn't taking this fight seriously. He was already looking past Dustin to a boxing match with Manny Pacquiao and the money that came with it. He even spoke about feeling something close to pity for the guy he was about to face.
I feel almost pity for some people in the game, to be honest. I had a little bit of pity for Dustin. He's been around many years. It's not a pretty game for a lot of people in this business. And I just came back and wanted to be respectful and give the dues and that this time. It wasn't reciprocated. It was shady. It's not that I didn't know about it. It's not that I didn't know the intentions, but now the intentions are clear, and I'm gonna punish him for that.
The fight itself was happening on Fight Island in Abu Dhabi in the middle of COVID, with a small crowd and a strange, quiet atmosphere. And waiting across the cage was a completely different Dustin Poirier to the one Conor had beaten in 2014. Dustin has spent those years turning himself into the most complete lightweight on the planet, and this time his team showed up with a plan.
The difference between the first fight and the second fight was you were landing hard leg kicks in the first fight, but you were landing them on the thigh, and then it switched over to the calf. What a crazy difference that calf kick has made in MMA over the last few years.
In the first round, Dustin started chopping away at Conor's leg with calf kicks, and you could see it changing the fight in real time. By the second round, Conor's movement was gone. His leg was dead underneath him, and Dustin walked him down and put him away, completely changing his life in the process.
I've had almost 30 fights in the UFC before I fought Conor the second time in Abu Dhabi, but knocking him out, when I came back to America from Abu Dhabi, it was completely different. Grocery stores, airports, everybody wanted pictures, everybody's talking to me.
It was the first knockout loss of Conor McGregor's entire career, and the aura went with it. The man who had spent years telling the world he could not be touched had just been stopped by a fighter he knocked out in under 2 minutes the first time they ever met. By the third fight, Conor needed the win, so he turned the volume all the way back up. The respect from the rematch vanished overnight, replaced with threats, insults aimed at Dustin's wife, and some of the ugliest trash talk of his whole career.
I'm gonna go through his head, put holes in them and take it off its shoulders. That's the goal here. He's done here. This is it for him. This is the end of the road. Even after that last fight, oh, I don't love this anymore. I don't love doing this. He knew what was coming. He knew the smacks he took. So it's on now. Saturday night he's getting walked around that octagon like a dog and put to sleep.
He was promising to end Dustin, doing everything he'd done back in 2014, and then some. But this wasn't 2014 anymore. Dustin didn't flinch at any of it. He called the talk weak, shrugged it off, and went back to training.
The aura's not there anymore. Very dangerous fighter sitting right here for sure, no doubt. But I see a man, you know, you guys in the crowd, cheer it up, have fun. But I see a man here in front of me that I defeated, and I know I can defeat again.
One man was screaming into every microphone he could find. The other was just getting ready to fight. And by now, everyone knew which one of these approaches actually worked. When the cage door closed, the two traded early, but it was Dustin who settled in and started getting the better of it. And then it ended in a way nobody could have scripted. As the first round ran down, Conor's leg gave way underneath him, snapping as he stepped back.
In the moment, I thought he went down from a punch because we kind of threw punches at the same time and he stepped back. I thought he went down from a punch. I didn't know. Until they called the fight and I looked down and saw his leg.
He went down against the cage, screaming, unable to continue. The fight was waved off and Dustin had beaten him for a second time. That image of Conor on the canvas became the one fans remember most. Conor McGregor had spent a decade building the loudest persona combat sports had ever seen, and the man who finally ended it was a quiet guy from Lafayette who barely raised his voice once. In the years after that night, one man's career kept rolling and the other man's basically stopped. Dustin Poirier went back to work. He fought Charles Oliveira for the title, submitted Michael Chandler, went to war with Justin Gaethje, and knocked out Benoit Saint-Denis. He got one more title shot against Islam Makhachev, and even in defeat, the two of them put on the fight of the night. But as everyone else has found out who stepped in there with Islam, there's just not much you can do.
When he gets the grip locked in, like it's complete, immediate blood shutdown. You know, usually you feel it slowly fading away. It was like right away.
Wow, so that dude's got a back.
Like the whole started
drive-through movie on.
The darkness started coming in like as soon as he got the grip.
Really?
Yeah.
He's so fucking strong, man.
After that, Dustin walked away on his own terms after losing his retirement fight against Max Holloway in front of his home crowd in Louisiana. And by the end, he was one of the most respected and most loved fighters the UFC has ever had. Fighting was part of his identity, but he knew it was time to step away.
Dude, I kind of got like, for a week or so, I would say depressed, but I kind of got into like a funk, like what the hell am I going to do with my life? Every day I would wake up for the last 20 years, how can I be a better fighter? What's new in fitness? How can I push myself? I want to be the champion, and then boom, you lay the gloves down and you wake up and you're a fucking civilian. Like,
right.
It feels crazy.
Conor's story went the other way. He hasn't fought since his leg snapped against Dustin. He coached a season of The Ultimate Fighter opposite Michael Chandler, then pulled out of their fight at UFC 303 with a broken toe.
Here's the thing about a broken pinky toe. When you're a guy who kicks as much as Conor, it's a fucking problem.
100%.
And it's also the same foot where his leg was snapped and he went into that fight injured. He's never pulled out of a fight before.
Never.
This is the first one he pulled out of, and I think it's wise. Because I think if you do have a broken toe and you are going into a fight and you did go into a fight, the last fight injured, what if that fucking toe becomes a real issue? Like, what if he throws a kick and it smashes again and he's in agony and he can't move?
I thought you and I were going to disagree on this. I couldn't agree more. And you got to realize what's on the line for Conor, too.
Yes.
Like, he loses this one, the ride's over.
Also,
So why risk it?
The fighting mostly stopped, and everything around it took over. There was the whiskey, a stake in bare-knuckle boxing, and a role in the Roadhouse remake. But after years of false starts, he finally set to return against Max Holloway at UFC 329, almost 5 years to the week since the last time anyone saw him fight. For a decade, the story was that Conor's persona made him untouchable, but the man who ended his prime didn't out-talk him and didn't out-style him, he just outworked him. Yeah, Conor's coming back, but his image ended the night a quiet kid from Lafayette stopped flinching. Dustin spent the early part of his career being lined up as just another name for the next big star to beat. He survived it and came out the other side a legend. But plenty of fighters in the UFC history weren't so lucky. To see exactly how the UFC sacrifices its legends to make its stars, check out this video next. Thanks for watching.